Hi, my name is Helen. Welcome to Running Rants with Helen, where I run and I rant and talk about whatever I want. And today I wanted to rant about coaching. So I just finished my first season being assistant volunteer middle school cross country coach. And also my college coach just announced that he's retiring. So I've been kind of thinking about coaching a lot and what I think is important and just kind of the state of coaching in trail running right now. So I'm going to start this by saying these are just my opinions. I'm not like trying to single people out, and I'm not like saying that these people are bad people or that they have bad intentions. This is just how I feel, and I wanted to talk about it. So if you follow professional trail running at all, you probably notice that it seems like most pros are coached by a few people, or a lot of pros themselves are coaches. And I think there's a lot to being a good coach, and I don't even really necessarily think that being good at running is one of those things. And I feel like I've talked a lot about like just because you're a professional runner, that doesn't mean you should be a coach, because I've seen some pretty silly nonsense things, and I think, like I said, there's a lot more that goes into it, and maybe like being self-coached, what works for you, that doesn't work for everyone. Like, I don't even necessarily know, like I don't think I would be a very good trail running coach. I think I'm a pretty good assistant volunteer for the middle school, but that's also like, we're not trying to get like the best performances of their lives out of them, and we play a lot of games. It's mostly fun. But yeah, most people I know in this space are coached by two people or maybe three. And I just feel like part of the problem I have with that is when you find someone who's already good at running and then you start coaching them, it's like they were already good, and it's not necessarily because of your coaching. And to me, it just feels like people are trying to build a coaching empire at the expense of athletes, especially when you have like so many athletes, or you're kind of using us for marketing purposes, being like, oh, you don't have to pay for coaching if you have an elite contract, or you get a discount if you're already good, which to me just doesn't really make sense. I do have a coach. He was my assistant coach in college, and I just feel really lucky because there's, I don't know, he probably coaches like 8 of us, but I was probably one of the first people he started coaching on trails, and I wasn't good before Rick, and I feel like a big part of why I've had success in trail running is because of him and the way that he coaches, and he's like always reading up on research, and things are changing, but I think a big part of that is Rick knows me really well, and so a lot of the coaching and my training is kind of geared towards keeping me happy and having fun, which I think is really important. Like even some of the other people he coaches, like we don't do the same training. Like I pretty much won't run on the track, and most of my days are like pretty easy. And I personally really like having a coach just because it takes like a little bit of pressure off of me as a runner. Like if I show up to a race and I'm not physically prepared, like at least in my brain I'm like, well, that's not my fault. Like I've done everything I was supposed to, so if I wasn't ready for it, like that's kind of on Rick. Yeah, and I think it's just nice that my coaching is really personalized, because kind of what I've seen from some of the other coaches, it's like if you coach 30 or 40 pro trail runners, at any given point, like someone's probably going to be doing well. And I don't know if that's like necessarily because of their coach, especially when training plans seem to be a little generic, or they're given like 2 weeks out. And I think it's probably hard when you have that many athletes to give like the same care and attention to all of them. And like I've just heard things like, oh well, so and so doesn't have that information yet about nutrition, or they don't have that information about this yet, so I'm not really worried. And I feel like that just turns like creates a really strange dynamic like within other people that have the same coach as you. I think something else that I've kind of seen too, which just reminds me a lot about my college experience and the way I was coached in that, is, at least to me from the outside, it kind of seems like a few of these coaches don't seem to care very much about longevity in athletes. It's kind of like, let's do all of this stuff now, and like if you crash and burn, like, oh well. And I just like I've said before, I just think we're lucky that running's one of those things that we get forever if we want it. And at least for me, trusting my coach and that he has my best interest in mind is really important to me. So then I don't second guess like what I'm doing. And I think we've seen it, like people have been coached by certain coaches and they're good for a few years, and then they crash and burn for whatever reasons. Maybe that's not a function of their training, and then that's kind of it, which is just a bummer. And that's the whole like building a coaching empire at the expense of athletes. And I get that it is a business, but at the same time, like your business really involves people and like their well-being. And yeah, I don't know. I've also heard from people that they're like, oh yeah, this coach gives me training and well, I just kind of do with it what I want, or I'll add these things or take away these things. And I think, like, at least as my situation, if I felt like something like that, it would be a conversation of like, well, why am I doing this, or what is it? Although I don't usually ask why. But yeah, it just seems crazy to me that you would have a coach and then not do it. But this is also coming from a place that I've had a coach the whole time I've ever run, like going from high school to college to after college. And I've had really good coaches and I've had not so great coaches for me. Like my high school coach, she was great. And I feel like I try to use a lot of things that like she taught me for the middle schoolers. Like we ran and we worked hard, but we also had a lot of fun. And like some days we just goofed off. Like some days we were supposed to go for a run and we would stop in the park and play ultimate frisbee. And we were kids, and I'm sure that we were not as sneaky as we thought we were, and she probably knew. And I think she probably also knew like us having fun was important to our success. And once again, like I said, in college, I feel like that was kind of a place where that was lost. Like, I've never been screamed at by a man like the way that I was screamed at by my college coach. And they were like absolutely favorites on that team. And I don't know, it's kind of crazy to talk to some girls on the team who were favorites and then us who weren't, and like we had completely different experiences. Like I wasn't allowed to eat dessert like the 2 weeks before conference. So like some people, like that wasn't a thing. And like I don't know, it was never told to me directly, but some of my teammates were told, like, oh, if you lose 5-10 pounds, like, you'll be a lot faster, which is just like so wrong. Yeah, and I feel like in a sense that's like doing more harm to your athletes than good. And I feel like that's something, like, as a middle school coach, that I want to embody, is like doing no harm and doing the most good we can, and like fostering these kids like healthy relationships with their bodies and with food and with exercise. And I feel like maybe I had that in high school, and then it was kind of like torn down in college. Still even happens in ultra running. Like, there's a coach that I heard that like told one of his athletes to only eat grapes on her easy days, and like that's just so wrong. I think in conclusion, coaches can be good because it takes like some pressure off of you, like second guessing training, and it's another set of eyes on what you're doing, and like a sounding board for good ideas and bad ideas. So if I hadn't had a coach, I probably would have run my second 100K like 4 weeks after my first one, which just is also not very smart. And yeah, I feel lucky to have a coach that like really prioritizes my well-being and my longevity and my happiness, but also like performing at a high level.
So it sounds like the importance for you is sort of that personalized, nuanced approach to everything else you're doing in your life and how your training fits into it, versus just someone writing a training plan for you.
Yeah, because like stress is stress, right? So if I'm having like a really stressful time in my life, I think it's important that my training takes that into consideration. And I don't know how your training does unless you have like that personal relationship with your coach. I understand like some people don't need that, and maybe they thrive on getting their training 2 weeks at a time and not talking to them, and that's it. And I don't think that's wrong, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just figuring out like what works for you. Because also, like, if I think about the people that have had like the biggest impact on my life and who I am since becoming an adult, like, it probably is Rick. And I probably talk to him like more than I do anyone else.
Has being a coach yourself given you any new insights on that relationship or like the world of coaching?
Yeah, I think just like how people are motivated. And with middle schoolers, I think maybe it's a little different than adults, but not that different, you know? And like, I'm just never gonna be someone who like is yelling at kids or is like trying to motivate them with negativity. I feel like a way that I've always been motivated is with encouragement. And I feel like I've just learned through this that that's not just me. Like, most of the kids are also motivated by that. And yeah, I think just like learning more about how kids are motivated and making sure that it stays fun, which I guess that's like just something I have in my own life. Like, fun is one of our team values, and I mean, so is hard work. And yeah, I feel like that's the big thing that I've learned. Also, that some kids sign up for cross country, I think they don't have to run, which is kind of crazy, just because out of every sport ever, cross country is probably the one that you like for sure have to run at. So that's been a little baffling. Thanks for watching Running Rants with Helen, and see you next time. Like and subscribe.